Shalom everyone, it's Rabbi Kliel, and today is Friday, May 22nd, and it's now been many weeks of being in a state of quarantine, of social isolation throughout this whole situation related to the global pandemic. And we're beginning to see slight relaxation in some of the restrictions that our province has put into place, and yet we're still not able to join together for services or for classes. And remarkably, in many ways, our congregation, like many others, has become strengthened by the lack of being together. Before I get into the Torah reading this Shabbat, I wanted to remind all of you that next Thursday night begins the holiday of Shavuot, and I wanted to invite all of you to join us for a wonderful night of learning. We refer to it as a Tikkun Leil Shavuot, or Leil Tikkun. It's a night of studying Torah as we commemorate the receiving of the Torah on Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai. And we Jews understand that revelation is not something that was held to one particular moment, that there are reverberations of this sense of receiving Torah, the eternal wisdom that are constantly being available to us. Now I wanted to transition into this week's Torah reading. For me, this is a very special Torah reading. It marks the 16th anniversary of my becoming a rabbi. In addition, it also marks when I offered the required senior sermon, which every senior rabbinical student was required to give before graduating. As luck would have it, I was permitted to give this sermon, this Dvar Torah, the day after I received my ordination as a rabbi. That's for another time, and I'd be glad to tell you more about it. But the Torah reading is Parshat Bamidbar, and with it comes a new book of the Torah, which is also known as Bamidbar. And Bamidbar literally means in the desert. So again, this Torah reading in particular has special resonance for me. In it, we read the journey of the people of Israel in the wilderness. And next week, as I mentioned earlier, we will celebrate Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah. The Midrash in Bamidbar Rabbah connects two accounts and asks the question, why was Torah given in the wilderness? The text goes on to say, Adonai spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai. Why was Torah given in the wilderness of Sinai? Anyone who does not make oneself as open, Hebrew hefker, ownerless, as the wilderness, is not able to acquire wisdom and Torah. The obvious question is, what does hefker mean? What does it mean to be ownerless? Maybe one way to understand it is that we are not attached to or owned by any preconceived notions, any idea or ideology. We are fully present to what's happening in that moment of revelation. In some ways, we have to be willing to let go of what we thought we knew in order to learn. So to make oneself hefker, to make ourselves ownerless, is to have the strength to be in the state of open-heartedness to things that we can't control. And to be ownerless is to hold uncertainty and be open to what comes to us with surprise and without judgment. Right now, the process of being quarantined is one which can be likened to the desert or being in the wilderness. It feels like a long journey, and we are not quite sure what the end will be or when things will go back to the way we knew them to be prior to this pandemic. The people of Israel could not know the end of their story, their journey. They must have been filled with questions and fears. And for us, in the middle of our wanderings and this uncertain journey, we too are filled with questions. We have basic questions, and we have more sophisticated questions. When will our children return to their schools? When will be the next time be that I can hug my grandparent or my grandchild? Will my business survive? Will I have a paycheck? When can we return as a congregation to our beloved sanctuary? And of course, there are a whole slew of other questions. One of the things that we are grappling with here at A Time as a leadership team is, well, what are we going to do about high holidays? So we need to ask ourselves, how do we make ourselves hefker when the journey feels so overwhelming and so frightening? Perhaps answers to these unfolding questions come and go. What we think we know this week, it might be very different than what we come to experience next week. Perhaps making ourselves hefker means to allow ourselves to sit with an open heart and sit with that uncertainty of not knowing and not having absolute control. And to become hefker, we can also remember to be open to each other. We are not on this journey alone. We stand with each other, strengthened by each other. Despite our distance from one another, spiritually, emotionally, we feel a tremendous bond. So in thinking back to 16 years ago when I became a rabbi, and thinking back 5 years prior to that, which, if my math is correct, 21 years when I first started in rabbinical school, I can remember feeling so incredibly excited but overwhelmed by what was coming and so uncertain. And the truth of the matter is that I wasn't alone. I had 30-something wonderful classmates. Most of them I remember well. And even though we don't see each other or speak on a regular basis, I know that because of them, I was able to finish that journey. And I want to remind all of us that it is truly because of the connections we have to family, friends, our co-synagogue members, people we meet and know from a variety of different places, that we will feel more grounded, more strengthened. And so let us remain open to being in that wilderness, in this time of uncertainty, knowing that there is something protecting all of us. Again, I want to remind you about Shavuot and the Tikkun Leil program that we're having next Thursday night. I also want to say with a great amount of excitement and an abundance of joy that our Beit Chaim, our online Jewish learning, our experiential educational program is thriving, so much so that we have received donations, generous donations, to help us continue through the month of June. And if you too would like to help contribute to this, please, by all means, be in touch with us. We would so appreciate it. I would encourage you to sign up. You should have received notice about our new program coming in June. And I can't wait to see you online. And of course, in my heart of hearts, I can't wait to rejoin with all of you in person. God willing, that will happen sometime soon. Shabbat Shalom. May it be a Shabbat of joy, a Shabbat of rest, a Shabbat of contemplation, a Shabbat where we remember those who are most vulnerable in our society, and a Shabbat where we strengthen the ties that we have with each other. Shabbat Shalom.